The Bronze Barony Brassy Cross Line by Jay Wilburn. Every story begins with a blank page, so let me see what I can do with this one. All right. The train traveling that rail line. All right, that's 2 words apparently. Traveling that rail line between the Bronze Barony and the Brassy Cross settlement was the first shipment in months. The 3 knights guarding the rolling cargo of food, supplies, and healing spells, potions, weren't positive the rails were intact the entire way. Bronze Barony. Alright, I need to get into some characters here and some action. Sir Lawrence Sixsmith walked the length of the train on top. Okay. Length of the train. The length of the train. Good Lord, I'm misspelling everything. Sir Lawrence Sixsmith walked the length of the train on top and leapt between the moving cars as he kept an eye on the hills. Bronze Barony was an outlying province, but used to be green with rich old growth before the recent wars began. Now what wasn't burnt appeared to be more desert than woods and grasslands. Say inside. Sir Basil Dolphin and Sir Rowana Moody had ceased their pacing patrol and stared out the windows at the same semi-barren landscape that Law observed from above. Roe wasn't afraid of riding on trains but it bothered her to see the ground this close up for too long. Law, Roe, and Baz had all been knights upon airships for many years. All right. When the Navori arrived, their fleet had been taken down in that first stalemate encounter. If she did not leave the ground soon, she thought she might go mad. All right. Around the next bend, Law stood up straight and still. His body barely rocked from side to side, keeping his balance with the gyrations of the train cars. He watched the grand and terrible thing come into view. The smokestack on the front, the smokestack, let's say above the engine, belched out a thick black cloud of, sorry, I dropped something there in my keyboard. Belched out a thick black cloud of pure carbon smoke. The stuff trailed over and around Law. He capitalized his name, around Law where he stood. He held his breath, but didn't bother pulling the cloth that was tied around his neck over his mouth or nose. He waited for the air to clear so he could witness the wreckage again. The fact that they were burning wood for dirty combustion instead of operating on the more efficient power of steam was a testament to... Okay, come on now. Testament... I don't know. I can't think right now. Alright, just had a letter wrong. Okay. Alright, the fact they were burning wood for dirty combustion instead of operating on the more efficient power of steam was a testament to how badly the war was going for the kingdom. Still, this Goliath of a machine brought down here in the foothills of the Gray Mountains was something to behold. It was a meaningful victory among many disappointing battles in the sky and on the ground. As the train rattled past, Law pivoted on top. Okay, now let's describe what he's looking at. All right. The Dreadmore had crashed and was destroyed beyond repair. Let's say it was not beyond, okay, let's say someday scavengers from one side or the other would come along and harvest all the scrap from this indulgent craft. Okay. For now, it lay abandoned. And abandoned, let's say, comma, a war memorial to whichever side eventually won. For now, everyone was too busy. May you never fly again, Law muttered under the wind of their travel. Whether he was talking to the grounded ship or the terrible lord who had commanded it, he wasn't sure. Okay. The decks folded and wrinkled with the contours of the hills in a way that made no natural sense. The scale of the destruction was beyond understanding. Something this heavy, a thing made out of this much metal, had no business being in the sky. Once it succumbed to gravity, the ground and the natural order of things was not prepared to receive it. Okay. It did not sit within an impact crater exactly. The Dreadmore, let's say the largest portion of the Dreadmore's ruptured hull had created a new ridge of rock and soil where it had pushed into the ground and plowed forward, obliterating hills older than time. Okay. Alright. I need this to be 3,500 words long, so I gotta be a little indulgent with the descriptions and things as we go through, but I think that lends itself to a story that is at least partially steampunk, so we'll keep going here. Alright, plowed, obliterated hills older than time. As the train continued along the tracks and looped into the surviving foothills, Law spied the furrowed trail of destruction that extended for miles behind the crashed air fortress. Okay. Let's do a new paragraph here. In a few of those, alright, what's happening here? Hit the wrong button, I guess. In a few of those uneven indentions, or imprints, let's say, water had started to gather in what eventually would become a series of Finger Lakes. Law imagined a day when even the rusting pieces of the Dreadmore would be long gone or buried. Long after this war was over, farmers or entire villages might form around those scattered lakes. Perhaps they would have no memory of this conflict. Law hoped that didn't mean he was living through the final... All right, let me make a new paragraph there. Let's say, Law hoped that didn't mean he was living through the final days of the kingdom. He loved being a knight more than anything. But what he did not want to be was part of the last order of knights who failed to save the kingdom during its hour of greatest need. He shook his head, turned his face into the wind, and his back to the fallen ship of his enemy. All right. He finished his patrol and dropped down to one of the platforms over the connector between two cars. Law searched out his fellow knights and found them in one of the back cars, still staring out the window at the Dreadmore, which diminished in the mist of the Finger Lakes. Alright, let's spell a few things right while we're here. Diminished. Okay. He didn't care for the last cars of the train now that they were burning logs instead of using pure steam power. The dark, choking smoke tended to gather around the back cars and seep through the seams and windows. Everything, well, let's spell windows right while we're here. I know I can do that. Alright, everything smelled burnt. And everything smelled burnt and was coated with a fine, dusty film of soot. Law had grown adverse to the smell of burnt things during the course of this war. His eyes and mind lighted on Baz with, let's say, lighted on Baz on the tail of those thoughts. Baz's skin, though treated with healing potions, was still tight and textured in a way that only skin healed from burns ever was. One side of his face, along with one arm, most of his chest and his back were scarred that way. With his long sleeves, let's say with the long sleeves of his duster, with the long sleeves of his duster, the gloves, and the broad brimmed hat he always wore, the side of his face was the only burned tissue. Okay, hold on. The only burned tissue that ever showed. Law tried not to be caught looking, but Baz usually did catch Law's stares at least a couple times a day. Baz told him not to blame himself countless times, but Law couldn't shake the image of Baz's airship going down. But Law couldn't shake the image of Baz's airship going down after he saved Law from being burned himself. He owed Baz and Roe everything. For now, the mission was these supplies for Brassy Cross which had been cut off from the kingdom for quite some time. Ro took a deep breath of sooty air and asked, "Do you want me to take topside for a little while?" Law thought, but then shook his head. "We all need to eat and rest. We have to keep our strength up and our minds clear for what may come." Maybe they forgot all about us. Maybe they forgot all about us, Baz said. "We'll slip right by like we are nothing important." Law rolled his eyes. "I'm glad you still have dreams. Let's go closer to the front so everything doesn't taste like smoke." Okay. The train rolled through the day. The train rolled through the day, and the sun moved to the other side of the hills to sink into rest. The terrain was painted the color of drying blood, and the rails glowed as if fresh from the blacksmith's forge. That was the scene, and the nature of the light as the train locked up on its brakes and nearly dumped the trio of knights into the floor. They all ran forward to see. Both Law and Roe leapt up between cars and pulled themselves onto the roof. There he was, standing dark and unmoving in the center of the tracks. Law stomped his boot on the roof, and Baz stuck his head out the next doorway. Before he could ask, Law told Baz, "It's Lord Shire." No, Shrine, sorry. Lord Shrine, standing and waiting like the devil at the gates of hell. Go tell the engineer to continue full ahead, no matter what else happens. All right. Okay. Baz asked any sign of the... All right, and we'll just put an M dash here to cut him off. Okay, hit the wrong button there. All right, Baz asked any sign of the... Just go and tell him now, Law said. Baz burst through the next door and ran to the front. Rowe and Law met eyes, and then they stepped off opposite sides of the moving train. As they hung on and leaned out. All right, let me make a new paragraph there. I know these are short, but that's all right. Okay. As they hung on and leaned out, Lord Shrine, formerly the captain of the Dreadmore, stood with arms crossed, dark robes flapping in the wind and unmoving. Law drew his gun and fired. Rowe matched his action from the other side. Okay. The brakes. Okay. The brakes let up, and the engine started chugging again as it put back on speed. Shrine stepped casually off the tracks. Shrine stepped casually off the tracks on Law's side and walked out through the scant grasses there. Roe climbed back on top, but not before Law let go and took a tumble on the ground. He retrieved his hat as he returned to his feet and trotted out toward Lord Shrine's back. The enemy appeared to just be strolling away, but Law wouldn't let up. He reloaded and locked the chambers into place. No sooner had he taken aim than Lord Shrine turned about and lifted hands. Oh, that is, you don't need an equal sign in the middle of a word, do you? All right. No sooner had he taken aim than Lord Shrine turned around and lifted hands enveloped in purple light. All right. Law opened fire. Shrine shot out beams of light that slowed and deflected the bullets, which spun end over end out into the light of the setting sun. Shrine followed up by firing energy at the lone knight with the train chugging along behind him and away. Law fired and was able to dissipate. Alright, let me see if I can spell that right. Was able to dissipate the energy of each attack from the wizard. Those attacks and counters worked both ways. As Law holstered his empty shooter. Shrine fired a few more balls of energy. Law drew his other sidearm and took care of those attacks as well. Shrine paused and smiled. You should have stayed on your little train, Sixsmith. You don't want to be out here with me alone. Not in day, and certainly not at night. Do you come here to pine for your lost ship? Okay. Law asked, gun still in hand. Are you living in its rusting and collapsing lower decks? It was a fine ship, Shrine said. But it was a fine ship, Shrine said. Finer than the ones I took out from under you. The Navori, sorry, took those from us for you. Shrine shrugged. You'll run out of ammunition before I do. As if to demonstrate this, Shrine threw some more energy. Soon, Law's second weapon clicked empty. Soon Law's second weapon clicked empty as Lord Shrine's hands still glowed with purple magic. See, Sixsmith? I see better than you. Hold on. The bullet tore through the wizard's tore through the wizard's shoulder. The light on his hands. Let's say, no, let me add one more thing here. We'll make this a new paragraph and then I'll finish up here. All right, the bullet tore through the wizard's shoulder. The sound of the shot arrived arrived an instant after the wound. The light on his hands flickered and went out like a shorted wire. I have friends, Law said, as he holstered another empty weapon. Unfortunately for you, so do I. Lord Shrine lowered a bloody hand from his wounded shoulder, and the purple energy returned, now tinged in red. Okay. Before the wizard could turn it against the knight, a cord drew up tight, and Law was snatched backward through the air. Like he had vanished. Shrine threw a bolt of energy after Law. And it was a close thing, but the magic died out before it reached him, and he reached the train. Roe helped Law unhook the harness, unhook the line from the harness under his coat. Baz continued to aim the long range rifle out from one of the windows, even though Shrine did not appear to be in pursuit. Eventually Baz closed up the scope and joined the other knights on top of the train. What do you think? Baz asked. Very nice shooting, Law said. Baz shrugged and laid the weapon across his lap. Well, thank you, but I meant, what are your thoughts on Shrine's visit and what he has planned? I could guess, Law said. Roe knelt down, but her head moved about on a swivel. I would guess we aren't getting much sleep tonight. I have little doubt that the Navori is out here, Law said. Without his ship, Lord Shrine would never face us like that unless his beast were at hand. And I believe that is what's next. Lord Shrine would have us roll into Brassy Cross with nothing but flames trailing behind the metal platforms of the destroyed cars. When do you... Okay, let's say Roe began. When do you think we should expect... Alright, let me get an M dash here. And let me spell you correctly. When do you think we should expect flame boiled up into the darkened air from beyond the next hill up ahead? Next hill up ahead on the same side of the tracks where Lord Shrine had gone. At least one of them is behind, Baz said. Now we just have to deal with the beast. Fire blazed out again in an illuminating arc from the great lizard's mouth. The beast had crawled out onto the hill. One claw rested at an awkward angle on the ruins of what might have been a shrine or other domed structure. Whatever it was, not much of it remained. Okay. One great wing flopped over the front of the hill like a leathery blanket. It extended its neck and opened its jaws to roar. At the last moment of that ground shaking echo, more fire belched forth. Okay, let's say the Navori's spikes reflected that glow all along its back. Law would always think of this monster by the name given it. By the name given it by his ancestors within the kingdom. This was Brimstone. As Law opened his mouth to give the order, Lord Shrine's voice echoed from the direction of the great and terrible dragon. I have come to end you all. There will be no saving. Alright, there will be no saving the villages you have lost. There will be no putting your kingdom back together again. This is the end of the line for you and the wretched king you serve. All right. Another burst of fire revealed Lord Shrine mounted upon a harness on the dragon's back. As through this entire war, Brimstone had thrown his power behind the evil Lord Shrine and against the kingdom that Law and his fellow knights served to protect to their own deaths if necessary. That end was coming to look more and more unavoidable. Brimstone took to the air and sprayed the tracks ahead in fire as it passed over. The grass on both sides continued to burn. The cross ties were blackened at the point of attack, while the rails glowed. Hold on. As the rails glowed a shimmering red, the train rushed over them with no apparent trouble. A few sparks flew out from under the cars. The flames passed on both sides with a whoosh as the train barreled onward past the dragon. All right. The beast circled and gained on the train from behind. Lord Shrine hissed out the order. Finish them. Brimstone built up heat in his cheeks and between his jaws. Even his eyes, with black lines the shape of dark lightning bolts started to glow with the intensity of it. All right. Okay. All right, glowed with the intensity of it. All right. The final car in line at the back of the train burst open as if exploding in a delayed reaction from the fire they had long passed. The undoing of that car surprised even the dragon, who allowed his unspent fire. Okay, hold on, let me fix one thing there. Who allowed his unspent fire to weaken within his mouth as he watched. A cloud of black smoke from the train engine swallowed up the destruction for a moment. Brimstone had no discomfort or concern about the smoke passing over him. Lord Shrine, however, covered his face with his robes as the smoke trailed over him. By the time it cleared, it was too late for the pair to not be caught off guard. All right. The airship with balloons fully inflated and covered in scales of protective material rose up from that opened car to a position above the dragon's flight path. Brimstone banked and cut hard to the right with a fireless roar. dark smoke of his own bled out of the beast's flared nostrils. Okay. It reacted so sharp and low to the ground that its wings... Oh, hey, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. I hope it is a good story. I'm sorry I missed your comment there until just now. It reacted so sharp and low to the ground that its wings tore away some of the grass and scattered the dull stones from one side. Oh, and thank you for the follow too. I appreciate that. I got so engrossed in the story I wasn't paying attention to chat the way I should. It reacted so sharp and low to the ground that its wings tore away some of the grass and scattered the dull stones from one side of the rail bed. The 3 knights on board the refurbished Tarpon. 3 knights on board the refurbished Tarpon worked together to skirt, let's say, close to the dragon's spiked side, and to unload a barrage of exploding harpoons against the dragon's scales. All right. The bursts from the artillery struck... Okay, oh my goodness, let's spell a few things right while we're here, just for fun. All right, artillery and struck, pardon me. Good grief, man. All right, there we go. All right, the burst from the artillery struck a little high. Do I have any pets? No. Used to when I was a kid, but we don't have any now. With some of the health stuff I have, it's not really good for me to have them, but no, I don't have any. The burst from the artillery struck a little high along its back and missed the vulnerable connection of its wing, which they had exploited in previous battles. Even still, the attack sent the monster skidding along its belly on the ground away from the train. Dirt, stones, and sod ripped up into the air on both sides of the beast, like waves splashed up from an ocean. Okay. The furrowed trail left behind by the dragon before it took to the air, roaring again, reminded Law very much of the crash site of Lord Shrine's favorite airship. Law turned the wheels and levers with furious speed as he called out, "I'm doing fine, thank you for asking. Was a little tired today, but felt a little better once I got on stream. Kind of felt natural and almost like a break from some of the other things I was doing today." Law turned the wheels and levers with furious speed as he asked, "Did you aim high because you were trying to blast Lord Shrine off the lizard's back?" Ro turned her head just long enough to give a quick smile. Okay, hold on. Law brought the ship around to stay in tight pursuit of the dragon and the wizard on its back. All right. Do you like to write stories? I do very much. I write full time, so novels and short stories and so forth are how I make a living. I also write a few articles and occasionally do some ghost writing too, but that's mostly to help pay for medicines and stuff, which run a little expensive. If I were just going by my own fiction in terms of money. So I make a little bit of money off of Twitch. I make a little bit off of Patreon. I make more from Amazon, from selling from my website. I'm a staff writer for a couple places and make money from there too. So all of that makes a living, but deep down, I just love writing stories. And then especially here on stream, I write, I'll write a new short story every time I stream and then edit a story and read an old one. And so I very much like just creating stories in all sorts of different genres. And if I can find something fun, like mixing steampunk with dragons and so forth, it really helps just bring the story along. This one's actually for a anthology call, so there's a word minimum about 3,500 words. So I'm trying to shoot for right around there. Otherwise, I might have made it a shorter story, but we'll see what we do in the editing. All right. It's good to have you here, man. I appreciate it. All right. Law brought the ship around to stay in tight pursuit on the dragon and the wizard on its back. All right. Brimstone launched itself straight up, but Law was already tilting the nose and bringing the side around to give Baz a shot at the monster that had burned him. This was not their first battle against this mighty and ancient creature since this war started. Brimstone's hope and instinct to clear the action before coming around for another attack was something they were, say the knights, something the knights were used to and prepared for. Baz tried launching the chain nets at the dragon's wings. Law sighed as he pumped up the boilers and powered up close behind the beast. Baz had tried this before in the past, back when all three of them still had their own airships. It had not gone well. Oh, I appreciate you coming by. Thanks for being here as long as you could, and thank you so much for the follow. That means a lot. I look forward to seeing you again. It had not gone well. All right. This time, all right, let me put a comma there. This time, Baz hit the wings dead on and folded them together. This time, Baz hit the wings dead on and folded them together in a tangle of chains and weights. Okay. The beast twisted straight up through. Okay, let me make this a new paragraph where we talk about what happens after his wings are tangled. The beast twisted straight up through the air on the momentum of its last flap. The beast twisted straight up through the air on the momentum of its last flap. Then it tumbled forward and down. Roe cried out. The tail. Pull back. All right. The tail, pull back. Law was quick to reverse thrust and release steam to to save the tarpon. Still, it was a close thing. The spiked tail missed tearing away the balloons and maybe half the hull by only a ship's length at best. The turbulence of the passing tail from the turbulence from the passing tail from the falling dragon shook the entire ship, and the 3 knights on board as the quake passed. Ro asked, "Did you get a little excited there?" It wasn't that close, Law said, knowing she knew it was a lie. All right. The dragon struck hard and spilled between the hills as it thrashed from side to side, trying to free its tangled wings. "Get us closer," Baz shouted. "We can finish them both off." Alright. Law continued to rise and turn, though. The dragon spied them above with its jagged eyes. Fire erupted from its mouth. The wash of flames hid the beast and turned the entire universe around them into darkness by comparison. The heat washed over them. I already used wash. The heat struck them like a wall, but the fire itself died just short of the protected, I'll say shielded, of the shielded belly of the airship. You forget about the fire there, Baz? Ro asked. Just want it done, he said as he reloaded a few launchers. The dragon leapt into the air with its wings still useless behind it. The beast continued to rise, though, from the strength of its powerful legs. Law, Ro shouted. I see it, he said, even though he still wasn't moving them up or away fast enough. The claws almost missed, but Brimstone whipped itself over. All right, hold on a second. Brimstone whipped itself over by twisting his long neck down and away as he threw his tail to the side. To the side. This gave him just enough extra reach to claw away several boards. From the side and bottom of the ship. As the dragon excuse me just a second. As the dragon and the wooden planks fell back to Earth, Law noted that if they were sailing on the sea instead of the air, they would sink. So even still, they could not afford they couldn't afford too many more strikes like that before the ship would come apart and they would be the ones falling back to the ground. We need to continue the attack while the train gets away, Law said. Baz called out, "Bring us around again. Ignore the dragon for a moment." Why would we do that? Ro called as she aimed a harpoon launcher downward. Alright, let me fix some spelling here right now. Launcher downward. Baz said Lord Shrine wasn't on its back, wasn't on Brimstone's back any longer. If he's hurt or even dazed, we need to try to finish him off. If he's hurt or even dazed, we need to try to finish him off. We might not be able to bring down that dragon for good, but we might be able to rid ourselves of a wizard tonight. Law followed Baz's suggestion without a word. He swung the vessel. He swung the vessel out wide and closer to the ground beyond the next set of hills. As they circled, Ro kept an aim on the dragon, but for the moment, the beast had occupied itself. As they circled, Ro kept an aim on the dragon, but for the moment, I need to put a comma there. But for the moment, the beast had occupied itself with the problem around its wings. I don't see him. Baz said as he ran from one railing of the deck to the other. A blast of purple energy. A blast of purple energy tore through the night air over their heads. it severed a couple ropes, and Law moved quickly to adjust the other connections. Ro moved her aim from the more distant dragon to the lone wizard, firing his energy up at them. There he is. Ro fired a volley of the harpoons at the ground, as if strafing. Okay, I'm not sure if I'm going to spell that right today. Strafing, there we are. All right. Ro fired a volley of harpoons at the ground as if strafing the side of the dragon again. They blew up in a rolling arc of explosions. Let's say Lord Shrine tried to dive out of the way. But was lifted into the air and slammed down to the ground again. Okay, but was lifted into the air and slammed down on the ground again. He did not land with as much grace as the dragon. He did not land with as much grace as the dragon. Take the helm, Law. Take the helm, Ro. Law ordered. She seemed reluctant to hand the armaments over to Baz solely, but she replaced Law at the wheels anyway. They all knew she was a more skilled flyer anyway. Let's say than the others. More skilled flyer than the others anyway. Law hooked a line to the harness under his coat and jumped up onto the railing. What are you doing? Ro did her best to hold the ship steady. Finishing this he dove off the side and fell toward the ground. The line started to hum and vibrate as the dark grassland rushed to meet him. He jerked a little as the pulleys above arrested his fall. Law's boots stepped down. I'll say set down gently. He lifted on the line he lifted up on the line again for a moment, but then he lifted up on the line again for a moment, but then came down on his feet and stalked forward. Shrine lifted his head. Shrine lifted his head slowly. And extended one shaking fist. Alright. Shrine lifted his head slowly and extended one shaking fist with dim purple light around it. Law drew one of his sidearms. There was a twang from above, and Law expected to be lifted away, but another heavy net wrapped up the wizard and sent him tumbling across the ground. Lord Shrine. Alright, hold on. Lord Shrine struck his head and went limp next to a small outcropping of rock. It hardly seemed honorable, but this was war. So Law drew back the hammer on his firearm. So Law drew back the hammer on his firearm and took aim. He saw the blinding light from his side before he saw the blinding light from his side before he heard the roar of the onrushing dragon that had finally freed its wings. Law soared into the air himself as the line drew up with all its power. He was shocked at how fast and high he was going. He started to fear they were going to launch him up past the balloons toward the stars. All right. His ascent started to slow, and Baz caught him around the shoulders to keep Law from slamming into the hull. All right. Roe, hold on, new paragraph. Roe continued to raise the ship higher into the air as Law climbed over the railing and unhooked his line. Going straight up was one of the dragon's old tricks. He probably knew it and would follow. Let's say, but as the three of them watched over the side, the dragon sprayed the ground around Lord's shrine. Does he think you're still down there? Does he think you're still down there? Baz asked. The wizard flew up out of the fire, surrounded in purple light as his robes burned away. The knights could hear him screaming even from their great height. Brimstone seized Shrine in one claw and slammed the wizard back to the scorched earth. the dragon clawed, bit, and continued. Clawed, bit, and continued to rain down fire onto the wizard between his feet. Law took the wheels again and circled them away so they weren't over the dragon anymore. But they stayed on the scene. All right. Let's say, all right, we're about 4,000, so I'm probably, when I edit, I'm probably going to cut as much as I can from the very beginning, and take out backstory that is probably not necessary. All right, Law took the wheels again and circled away, so they weren't over the dragon anymore, but they stayed on the scene. When Brimstone ceased his attack, there was nothing left of Lord Shrine. All right. The dragon shook itself like a dog shedding water. Purple light sprinkled off the dragon's scales. When it turned its eyes on the ship above, their shape had changed. In the light of the surrounding fires in the grasses, the knights could see that. All right, let me spell something right here, sorry. The knights could see that the dragon's scales had changed from a gray-white non-color to nearly emerald green. What's happening? What's happening? Baz asked. The dragon roared up at them, but there was no fire. It took flight and rose up and away over the gray mountains, away from the kingdom and the war. Was the dragon under Lord Shrine's spell? Ro asked. Law answered that would explain a lot but I don't know. Baz let out a long exhale. If it's true, Shrine is gone, and the dragon would be done fighting us for him. Law shook his head as he steered them back along the path of the train tracks. He was hopeful, but didn't want to say anything out loud yet. They would need to tell the king what they had seen. The king, his advisors, and wizards, I'll say sages, and sages loyal to the kingdom would have to make sense of it. They had another mission for now. A village that had been cut off for a long time needed supplies. Maybe they could offer hope as well. The airship descended as it matched pace with the train, cutting through the night. They could land back into the cradle, in that last train car on the end, but Law kept the boilers going and guarded the train from above for now. He, let's say, like his fellow knights, he enjoyed the view from the air. Okay, hold on. We're in the home stretch here. Like his fellow knights, he enjoyed the view from the air. And the feel of racing through the sky by the power of steam. All right.